Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Fox, and today I wanted to show you my brand new Hasbro tank build. I was inspired to make this build from actually a couple of different players that I've sort of discussed Hasbro with and just status in general. We all know it's a bit of an issue in conflict and the Dark Zone, just PvP in general at the moment, with the TTK being so low, a bit too low in my opinion. I think they definitely need to raise it a little bit. Status is incredibly powerful, as you just need to throw out a tier 6 stinger or a sticky bomb or whatever else, traps, seeker mines, and it's quite easy to close kills. So of course Hasbro is quite an important build. Now, when I come up against a status player, I'll usually just rock a long range build so I can gun them down from distance, or probably just a tanky build. But what I wanted to do was to create a build that is not only designed to counter status, but also to counter mortars. So I was initially inspired to make this build from KamikazeVonDoom. I don't know if any of you have watched his video on his anti-mortar builds. I was part of that testing with him. He went into the Dark Zone and just bombarded him with mortars and traps and so on, which was awesome fun, by the way. Thanks for letting me kill you several times over in that testing, Cami. If you want to check out that video, it is in the description below, by the way, and it will be at the top of your screen now. That was a really good build. And what I suggested to him was to try out Sawyer's knee pads because they have the anti-stagger. Now, I know Sawyer's is a really weird, unusual pick for PvP. They don't really perform very well, and this build is definitely a bit of an off-meta build. But the part of it that isn't off meta is the fact that it is a shotgun build, and the reason I went down that route was the other person that kind of inspired me to make this was somebody from Ice. I can't remember his exact name now. He's got quite an unusual name, but and again, I'm not actually sure of the clan's full name. I just know him by their acronym Ice. And he encouraged, or he was sort of saying that status is easy to counter because you can just get in there with a shotgun and M870 and two tap them. And that's actually true. Shotguns are so powerful at the moment that regardless of your build, for the most part, you can kill people very quickly. Whether you've got loads of blues, loads of reds, they do kill very quickly. So what I wanted to do was kind of combine those two ideas, use the Sawyers for the anti-stagger, a very high tank build with loads of Hasbro, and of course the Adrenaline Rush Intimidate shotgun option to actually be able to get into a mortar or a status user and kill them quickly. And it works really well. I'm actually quite happy with this build. It's, like I say, it definitely is off meta, but by all means, check out the timestamps below. What I'm going to do is, in the usual fashion of my videos, go through the build itself and explain why I've gone for these pieces. And if you don't want to use Sawyers, don't worry, it's very easy to swap these off. This is actually what I would call a 7-piece build, 6 pieces of gear that you see here, but you actually want to have 2 knee pads, and I'll come to that in just a second. So yeah, we'll go through the video, we'll go through the build, I'll show you the stats on the build. I've been able to get my crit chance and crit down. Yeah, okay, it's not too bad. I mean, this is ultimately a Hasbro build, so the damage is never going to be amazing. What we'll do once we've gone through all of that is then go into a conflict game. I will leave that footage unedited so you can just see where the build is strong, where it is weak, because Hasbro builds always have a damage problem, but I do genuinely believe that the shotgun to a degree circumvents that, and even without the damage buff from Sawyers, which you definitely don't need, the main point of these is for the anti-stagger, this build can still do some work. Now when you get to that conflict gameplay, you may notice that I have turned on my what they call the accessibility settings for colorblind, and the reason for that was actually a suggestion from an Xbox streamer, UkZz MIKE JAMES. He sort of encouraged me to turn that on, as it makes status and mortar circles have a line around them, which is great for people that are colorblind, but it's also just good for PvP in general, as you can clearly see the radius of hives, seekers, stingers, anything that has explosive damage, you'll see a radius of. If you guys aren't a fan of that, you might notice even the colours on the screen in front of you now look a little bit different. If you're not a fan of that, let me know and I will turn it off. It is a little bit unusual from a gameplay point of view. But yeah, thanks UkZz MIKE JAMES for suggesting that. I personally really like it, and if you do want to check out his streams, his Twitch channel will once again be in the description below, so get on there, watch his streams. He does a really good job in the Dark Zone. He's a pretty solid player. He's certainly kicked me to the floor a couple of times. Yeah, it'd be great if you want to watch some good PvP gameplay. Okay, let's get started then. Let's have a look at the build first, and then we'll get into that game. So, being a Hasbro build, we need to spec into, of course, loads of hazard protection, specifically burn and bleed immunity. They are by far the two most important. And snare immunity from riot foam is slightly less important, but it still needs to be up there. What I've also done, instead of just specking every piece into explosive resistance, is go with the Sawyers. So to start with, we are running the Demolitionist specialization. The main reason for this is that it gives us the 20% burn resistance, but what it also does is give us 5% damage to targets out of cover, specifically to our 3 teammates or whomever else is in our team. Don't forget that doesn't apply to yourself. I know there was a bug with Demolitionist where it did sort of stack, and I don't know if that's been patched or not yet, but I believe it has. What it also does is give us the ability to completely and instantly refill our magazine on whatever weapon is in our hand when our armor breaks. This is very, very powerful for strained weapons and also for shotguns, particularly the one I'm using, as it has a low rate of fire, a slow reload and a small mag, which may sound like a bunch of bad things to have in a shotgun, but the one I'm using is absolutely the best shotgun in the game just for pure damage. So lots of reasons to use demo for this, but the main reason is of course that 20% burn immunity or burn resistance. It does give us quite a nice fragmentation grenade that has a large radius and applies bleed. This is also really useful as well. Great for closing off kills, certainly. So the main weapon on this build is the military M870. This is the meta shotgun at the moment. If you're looking to run a shotgun build, be it the one you see here or just a more traditional one such as the one that I showcased on my channel not too long ago, that'll be in the PvP playlist if you want to check that out. It was all about the M870. There are some honourable mentions, the Marine Super 90, the Scorpio of course, which is actually pretty good on this build, and the 612, but I just, we're here for damage. We want to be able to shut down those, annoying mortar guys, those annoying status guys, and the best way to do that is with the M870. I didn't want to use in sync just because being that close range to people, you can easily lose all of your skills. You can be disrupted, particularly from a status guy. If they're running a tier 6 EMP jammer, that will disrupt you for about 7 to 8 seconds. Admittedly, with this build, it won't because we're Hasbro, but I still don't like the idea of using in-sync. I just want to get in there, not worry about a shield necessarily, and gun them down. An Optimist gives us increased weapon damage for all the ammo that we're missing from our mag. As there are only 5 bullets, or 5 shells should I say, with the M870, you get this ramped up very, very quickly. And the good thing with shotguns, they're one of only 2 weapon types, the other being LMGs, in the game that give us both damage to armour and damage to targets out of cover. These are both multiplicative stats that do work very well in PvP. Secondary weapon, as I always suggest with all my builds, if you have a close range primary, you need to be running a long range secondary. When I say long range, I don't mean a sniper or a rifle, I specifically mean an assault rifle. The main reason for that is that assault rifles intrinsically come with 21% health damage. This works against deployed skills, not shields. Enemy shields are damage to armour and damage to targets out of cover, so our shotgun will one-shot pretty much any shield in the game, apart from maybe a bulwark. But deployed skills, and specifically the ones we're looking to counter with this build, mortar turrets and stinger hives, you do a lot more damage with an assault rifle. Which one you use and what talent you use is entirely your choice. I'm just using my strained carbine here, which is great because we don't have a lot of crit damage on this build. And then for my sidearm, you can either use the 2 best pistols, or two best options are the 2 DZ exclusive, the name card pistol with the +1 skill tier, which you absolutely want to roll to finisher, or the perfect finisher, named Magnum, the Orbit, which is my personal preference, just for some extra crit hit chance and damage. So as is the case with most Hasbro builds, we do need to get the 2 Seska and the 1 Jarl on here. Now I've actually got 5 blue on this build. That's quite hard to achieve because Seska intrinsically rolls as weapon damage as a red core, so if you can only get 4 blue, which is very achievable on this build, then that is absolutely fine, that'll work perfectly. What you want is every piece rolled exactly as this or as close to this as possible. You need high weapon damage or armour for the most part for your core attribute. You need crit chance on every single piece, unlike a Lady Death Hasbro build, which I don't think is as good by the way. That's what I used to use and I feel this is better. You can get away with crit down, but with these every single piece needs to be as high Hasbro as you can and as high crit chance as you can get rolled as well. So you see that's what we've gone for with the Seska here. My second piece of Seska is the holster, which is rolled in exactly the same way. I do need a little bit more optimization here to get this up. If you do have all 5 pieces outside of your exotic rolled to crit chance and the crit chance mods on your weapon, so you see I've got crit chance here, and then just the reload speed, the flexible spring, then you will actually hit 60% with the maxed out watch level. But the good news is because my holster is a little bit low, 4.6, the good thing with Demolitionist is it gives us the 7% mod. So of course usually it's 5%, the extra 2% meant I was able to hit the cap. So just aim for that crit chance and Hasbro on every single piece just like this. I opted to get 1 piece of Bellstone in here. This is first and foremost a tank build. The whole point of this is to get into a status's kind of close range area or a mortar user and kill them, and you're going to need a bit of I say a little bit, I mean I've only got 1%, but I do feel that was enough to keep me alive in a lot of situations. Obviously you can't face tank with 1%, but the whole point of it is just to keep you alive whilst you're running around, and I do think that armor regen is quite important with close range builds for the most part. This is once again rolled in exactly the same way: armor, Hasbro and crit chance. We are running Intimidate and Adrenaline Rush with this build, as they just work incredibly well with any shotgun build. Intimidate is an amplified damage talent. It's very, very powerful. 35% additional weapon damage to any enemy that's within 10 meters, whilst we have our bonus armor. That stacks very nicely, of course, with the Adrenaline Rush talent, which in PvP, if we quickly change that, just gives us the 10% bonus armor, up to 3 individual stacks when we are within that same 10-meter radius. Yes, this procs off of skills as well, so if you come into range of a mortar user that's sat next to their mortar, say they're sat in cover, you're going to get 2 procs, 20%. So that's just more bonus armor, which means you're more likely to keep your Intimidate up for longer. Finally, we come down to the Yale gloves. So these are also DZ exclusive, so a lot of these pieces you're going to need to get some conflict caches, DZ caches, or just get into the DZ. But of course Yale is very important, as it gives us the 10% Hasbro, and this is once again rolled the same as the rest of the build with armor, Hasbro and crit chance. So next we come down to the final piece of the build, and the strange one. The main reason that I'm using Sawyers is for the stand your ground talent, or specifically the first part, which is that you cannot be staggered by explosions. This is unbelievably powerful, and you know, speccing into explosive resistance doesn't actually stop the stagger, it will stop the damage. But what this will do is stop the stagger, which in my opinion is more important. We have 5 blues on the build, and the Sawyers do come with 10% explosive resistance anyway, so that they do give us a little bit of damage reduction. But if you're in the middle of, you know, gunning somebody down and they just drop a seeker on you or a mortar, this is going to stop you from being staggered, which means you can just keep fighting them. Yes, you'll take a lot of damage, but it will take 3 mortar shots to kill you on a 5 blue build, potentially 2 if they're running glass cannon. So either way, it's definitely more than 1 regardless of their build, and that's more than enough time for you to get in there, not be staggered, and not lose your ability to reload or fire your shots, and it works incredibly well. Now the second part of this is the part that you would never use in PvP, or at least what I used to believe. But I found that when testing this build out, you actually do spend a lot of time waiting for people, and if you just get in the habit of staying perfectly stationary whilst you do that, what you will then have is a 10-second window, even when you are moving, since this was buffed, where you have 30% multiplicative total weapon damage. This is more powerful than Vigilance. It's exceptionally powerful, and it really helps to flesh out the damage on this build. First and foremost, you need to be using Sawyers for the anti-stagger, but if you have an opportunity to build up some stacks, do so. I play this build like I don't have Sawyers on for the damage, so I don't just sort of stand still all the time and wait for the buffs. But like I said before, there are definitely times when you just, you know, you're waiting for the team to come back when you're in the dark zone or in PvP. So it actually works really well for that. And, you know, surprisingly, and I was quite surprised at how well this works, you can do really well with these knee pads. If you want to swap these off, say you come up against a status team but they're not rocking explosive damage, so specifically Seeker Mines and Mortar turrets. Yes, I know Stinger Hives count as explosive damage, but they don't stagger you, so we're not fussed about that. Then you want to swap these off for a Grupo or a Walker, but it will need to be rolled in the same way as the rest of our gear. Ideally armor with crit chance and Hasbro. If you have, I think it's probably Walker or Grupo will be my personal preferences. I can't think of anything else that I would potentially use. Maybe you could go for a Coyote's Mask and then get your Seska down here if you really wanted. That could potentially work. But what I would encourage you to do is to farm these 6 pieces, and then the 7th piece wants to be your needs. And the reason for that is if you come into a game where they're using mortars and status, you can put your Sawyers on, and then mid-game, if you need to swap something off, you can just go straight into your loadout, think, right, yep, there's my Hasbro. So for example here, you say I have a Walker with weapon damage, Hasbro and crit chance. I could just quickly swap that on. I don't need to worry about my Coyotes, which I'd then have to swap the mods around. I can just quickly mid-game go into this, swap that around. Same thing again. So I do recommend having 2 pairs of knees, one being Sawyers and one being a crit chance, Hasbro, Walker or Grupo. So that's the build just there. The skills that I like to use, I am still using the shield, and Noah said that I didn't want to use a shield to proc in sync. That is still true. When you're being mortared, those extra few frames, the seconds essentially, that it takes to deploy your shield. And yes, you do still get staggered if that breaks, by the way, as it doesn't class as explosion stagger. I just want to remove the stagger altogether. So this is only here if I'm taking too much damage and I want to keep my adrenaline rush procs active, as of course adrenaline rush is the bonus armor is the first part of armor that you will lose when damaged, which means we'd lose our intimidate, and a shield does help to prevent that. So this is purely here for safety and a last resort, as opposed to an in-sync proc. If you want to use a booster hive to help the rest of your team, don't forget this is predominantly a support tank build, in the sense that you're there to remove the status and mortar guy from the game, then by all means swap off to a booster hive as well. For the most part, my tanks always run the jammer pulse to shut down skills, and of course the booster hive to get rid of status. So the jammer pulse is great. When you get close enough, you can quickly EMP that. You might have taken 1 or 2 mortars in the meantime, but you can get close in, pop the jammer, gun them down, and then that's one less person on the opposite team that can essentially harm your team, which then gives them the opportunity to push on their potentially more squishy builds. So they're my 2 favourite skills here, but these 2 are quite flexible. I think the jammer is a bit of a necessity, but the other one you can definitely play what you want. So let's have a quick look at the stats and we'll load into that game. We are at 267.5k PvP weapon damage without any of our active buffs on the build. Because of the fact that I landed crit chance on every single piece and I had the 7% mod on my weapon, I was actually able to hit the 60% crit chance cap, which is fantastic. Now my crit damage may seem very low at 45, but of course this isn't an SMG build where we already have loads of crit chance, and with a Hasbro we can't roll that much crit damage. When I tested this out, I didn't even need full stacks to output more damage from the Sawyers than with a Gruppo, which of course would have given me a lot more critical hit damage. So yes, these numbers seem low, but once again this is a tank Hasbro build predominantly and a damage build sort of secondly. So yeah, the 45 crit chance is, or crit damage should I say, is absolutely fine. We do still have a lot of damage to armor from the weapon, and whilst it doesn't show it here, damage to targets out of cover as well, which definitely helps that out. If you go down to my armor stats and my Hasbro stats, you'll see that I'm at 1.6 million armor from the 5 blue. We have no armor on kill and a tiny bit of armor regeneration from the Bellstone. I know 16.5k doesn't seem like much when we have 1.6 million armor, but 1% over 100 seconds would get you to full, so less than 2 minutes. If you're just running around in the dark zone, it's just going to slowly but surely top you off constantly. And yeah, it works really well. So I do like the 1 Bellstone. It's not a necessity, don't get me wrong. You could just run a Gruppo chest or get something else in there, but to achieve the 5 blue, I just felt that the Bellstone was an easier and safer way to do that. If you go down to my Hasbro, so running the Sawyers, I am only sat at 80%. If I was to run the Gruppo or the Walker that I just showed you with the Hasbro, that would of course be 90%. Now to be bleed immune, you need to be hitting, it's either 92% or 95%. I think one is true for PvP and the other in PvE. I did test this a while ago and I can't remember exactly what it is. If anybody does remember off the top of the head, please let everybody else know in the comments. But either way, as long as you are as close to 100% as possible, you'll be bleed immune. Of course, because we have Demolitionist, we are already burn immune as we gain the additional 20%, as you can see on the right hand side there from the incombustible talent. And what I've also done is got my ensnare resistance very high as well at 90%. This also makes me immune, as ensnare is only 85% in PvP unless they have a tier 6 build, and even if they do, it will last a fraction of a second. The way that I've achieved those is by getting 2 bleed mods. You see I've got 9.4 here, 9.7 here, and 10% ensnare resistance. But if they're not running right foam, you could very easily just go into this and swap it off for a 12% crit damage mod, which would absolutely flesh out your damage even more. So use your 2 bleed mods to make sure you're getting the bleed immunity. That's very important. That'll stop Ridgeway's users from proccing their armor regen, from proccing their sadist, and from proccing their wicked talent on their backpack, which means they will do literally nothing to you. So bleed immunity is by far the most important, and you've already got the burn immunity anyway from the demo. So yeah, that 3rd mod, just basically play around the sort of groups that you are coming up against. I'd rather just be immune to the 3 most dangerous types and stick with the ensnare, but ultimately this build is quite flexible. So that is the build just there. Screenshot that if you would like to. What we will now do is load into that conflict game, and fingers crossed we actually come up against some hazard users or some status and or mortar / seeker mine users, and yeah, I'll show you just how well this build performs. Let's get started. Alright then, so let's see if we can find some status, guys. I only got a chance to inspect 2 people on the opposite team before the game loaded in. And they weren't rocking status, one had a focus build. Alright, buddy. There's the old in-sync. Old in-sync habit coming in there. Oh, that was a lot of damage. Ooh!
Immediate medical assistance needed.
Oh, I missed 2 shots. No. There's the armor regen coming in clutch though. 1% saved me. Ah! I missed 2 shots. I was trying to break his shield to get the stagger off so I could have pulled back, but I missed up. I messed up. What I'll do is spawn straight back in and see if we can help my teammates out. Now, I did see a Stinger Hive going off there, so I don't know if that was my teammates or the enemies. Ah, looks like it was my teammates. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know why my aim assist wasn't working. I was just trying to snapshot onto him and see if I could just break his shield. That's the good thing with shotguns. Regardless of the build, they are very effective at breaking shields. So what I'm going to do here, they're pushing us now. I'm not going to run down that lane because I've got a shotgun build. So I'm actually going to try and build up a few stacks here. So you see my soys is building up there. What I can now do is push in on this. I've got 10 seconds. To do exactly that.
An agent needs assistance.
There's one guy just behind this wall. And there it is. I had a bit of support from my teammates there, but that's the point. You're the guy that needs to get in the front lines, tank the stingers, the seekers, the mortar turrets. You won't be able to tank explosive traps. It's one of the few, I say the few, actually there's quite a long list. And I think I'm going to make a separate video on that and hopefully maybe draw some attention to Massive. But a lot of the nerfs and fixes that they introduced in earlier patches were actually reverted accidentally in TU12. And the explosive trap is one of those. It's still one-shots any build regardless. They didn't nerf the damage correctly. So what I'm going to do here is just build up a few stacks again. Remember you don't need to worry about doing this all the time. See you later, buddy. That guy's lagged out, we just stood there. Right. Let's get a couple of soil stacks on the go again. I'm going to go help my guy out. So I've already got half stacks here. That's already 15% multiplicative damage. There you go. 2 shots after the shield. And this is a 5 blue build with 45% crit damage. Right, let's get my boy up. Oh, these different colours are weird from the change in my settings. Nice try with the foam, my dude. Not going to do much to me. Look at that bleed. It did nothing. Oh, that was a lot. Oh, I forgot they had a focus guy, didn't they? Don't start resing me yet. No, don't start resing me yet. They're going to shoot me. Yes! I was actually building up stacks whilst I was on the floor. I didn't know that. Let's try and get a few more stacks up. We got this focus guy. Okay, he's pulled back a little bit. Get that popped. Oh, why can't I use my... Oh, I couldn't use my... That was weird. I couldn't use my jammer there.
Agent down.
I think my skill bugged out. Oh, yes. Can we get this up in time?
Rogue seeker mine detected.
I sent a specialization supply drop your way.
Come on, buddy. Fight me. Fight me. Oh, that focus guy. Woo, that's a lot of damage.
Agent killed. Rogue defender drone.
Focus with the FAMAS. That's going to sting. That is going to sting. I'm seeing quite a lot of focus builds in PvP at the moment, just sort of sitting back. It's kind of akin to my Ranger build, and I think what I'm going to do is potentially adapt that to have focus, and rock it with a Mantis as a secondary. So I want to see if that build works. I will definitely be putting that together. It's not my idea or anything. I've seen plenty of people running focus, and you know, I play a lot of PvP with On The Move, OTM, an Xbox clan that are pretty good for the most part in DZ and Conflict. And one of their guys runs a focus build, so yeah, I am keen to try that out. It's a very passive, sit-back kind of play style, but the amount of damage it does is insane. Oh, guy, you need to get into cover. So what I'm going to do here now is just build up some stacks. Again, there's no reason to push here, so I might as well use this downtime to build soy stacks. And this, I know I've said this a few times now, but it comes back to the same thing. You don't want to play soys just to build the stacks. It's there predominantly for the anti-stagger, but you might as well use a secondary feature in situations where you wouldn't necessarily be moving anyway. And then if I now decide to push these guys, which I'm going to as soon as my teammates take the heat from them, so probably about now,
Rogue Stinger hive
you then got that
detected.
10-second window to do that. So in that entire I see you. In that entire time, I had an additional 10%, 30% damage.
Immediate medical assistance needed.
Teammates, I need some help here. Oh, I'm low. No. Oh, why did they help me?
Agent
the
vital
wrong guy.
signs 0.
That's fair enough. I guess this is the downside to solo queue. A really good tip. In any PvP engagement, you always want to be team shooting. I made the mistake of going for the one guy. I thought my teammates run him as well, but they obviously pushed the other guy. Looks like we are winning though. We're on 6 kills and 3 deaths with 48 million damage, which, you know, a lot of that will be shield damage, but that's the other advantage of shotguns. If you're removing the enemy's shields from the game, they don't have that to fall back on. They can't proc their in-sync as easily. It's still a useful thing.
Detected. Boost.
Oh, I'm coming, buddy. I'm coming. Don't die. I can't be staggered from that.
An agent needs assistance.
This Stinger is doing nothing to me. Fortunately, I can't EMP it for my dudes, though. Built up a few stacks there.
Rogue Artificer hive detected. The enemy is acquiring a boost. The enemy
It's so tanky.
There are no more rogue reinforcements.
Try and take some measure from my teammates here. Come on, mate. Fight me. Fight me. You can't do anything. I'm too tanky. How is he not dead? How is he not dead?
agent down.
I think his armor regen it is. Ah, that's the focus guy. Uh-oh.
Medical assistance
Ah, so nearly finished him. Yes, teammate came in for the clutch.
incapacitated.
Oh, that's a risky res. There's a guy right there. If they can kill him fast enough, they might still be able to pull this res off. Oh, absolute legends. Hostel, you hero. And I built up all my soy stacks whilst I was down as well. This is awesome. I've only got one player left now. I'd actually feel comfortable enough to run into their spawn with this build, which is,
Artillery turret
incidentally...
detected.
Oh, here we go. This is the test. Right. Let's build up some soy stacks.
Rogue Stinger hive detected.
I'm going to run through all of that. I might still die because I'm going to be red shielded, and you do take a lot of additional damage when you are.
Vital signs critical.
Ah, yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
Agent out of action.
Oh, it's got glass cannon on. Yeah, glass cannon's always going to be rough, and I was red shielded.
Reinforcements
If I'd have got
are
that second
gone.
shot off in
It's up
time,
to
I would
you
have killed him.
An agent needs assistance.
It's
General
all
rule
about
of thumb,
elimination
don't ever
now.
run into the opposition spawn. When you're red shielded, not only do you do a lot less damage, but you take considerably more damage, and he had both a stinger and a mortar on me. Now if it was outside of his spawn, I would have easily two-tapped him there, but I couldn't quite get the second shot off in time just due to the low rate of fire. You know, I built up my stacks, and even though I had that red shield debuff, I was still able to take down a massive chunk of his health, but unfortunately it wasn't quite enough.
Friendly claiming the supply drop.
Oh, sudden death.
Specialization supply drop is in friendly
It's 21
hands.
seconds, so hopefully we win this just on points. Yeah, that radius is nice, that sort of white line around it.
Boost about to activate.
See how much damage it does. Ah, I wanted to test the damage. Never mind.
It's a win. Solid work.
So there it is. Unfortunately we didn't get a chance to test too much of the anti-stagger there, but those seeker mines that were popping out, yeah, they just won't knock you at all. You can continue firing, and hopefully that proved that shotguns do enough damage even on a high blue, low crit chance crit dam build, or low crit dam in particular, even without the Sawyer's buff. But I really do think that with that inclusion, you know, the anti-stagger just makes it super powerful. When I was just dancing with people for half of that, yeah, I took some damage from the focus guy because I was playing a bit too aggressively, but I was taking all the heat when my teammates weren't, and for a lot of those fights where I was very low, all of that was damage that I'd taken that they hadn't, which meant they have the opportunity to gun down the people that are shooting me, which is exactly what a tank is supposed to do, create space for their team. Let's have a look at the leaderboard. So we did finish on 9 kills with 4 deaths, which is second best in the lobby, second only to the guy on the other team. Basically 60 million damage, which, you know, is pretty huge for, once again, a build that has 45% crit dam and 5 blues. So it definitely works. It's a great shield breaker. It's fantastic for anti-status and anti-mortar. This is how I play my Hasbro build now. I've been testing this for a while, and I really do like this. Let me know what you think in the comments. I know the Sawyers is probably going to get a few dislikes. People are going to say it's stupid, but try it first. Try it first, and you might be surprised at how well it works. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.